Welcome to the Borders Distillery, here in the middle of Hawick on this lovely October morning. We're going to go inside now and I'll show you around the distillery as we're making Scotch whisky. We'll go upstairs to production. So where we're walking up now is the only new part of the distillery. The buildings to the left where we make the whisky were put up in 1888, and we took this building in 2015 and we've restored it completely, put another 100 years of life back into it. And in doing so, we've managed to build in all of the sustainability elements that are necessary now if you want to operate in this industry. So now we're going to walk into the mash house. And as you can see as you walk in, you can see around some of the original features of the building. This random rubble stonework, old Victorian glass split roofs, the hoist which still works, which is a memory to the building's last use, which was an engineering workshop for about 40 or 50 years. And here we have the mash house. This is where we ferment our barley to create our beer, which we then distill into whiskey. So if you just come to me to the end, I'll show you the mash tun. So it all begins here with malted barley, which we bring all from locally grown barley from the Scottish borders, and that arrives at the distillery every week, 20 tons at a time. We mill the barley. This is the mash tun, where we put our grist, which is our milled barley. We put in 5 tons at a time, and then we put hot water on the top, let it percolate through the cereal, and that gives us the sugary water that we want, which we call wort. And then just up there, after that process, we add yeast, and we create a fermented liquid that we call wash. So this is a washback, 25,000 litre stainless steel fermentation vessel. You get a fantastic rich smell of fermenting barley there, and if you have a look inside, you can see what happens when you add yeast to the sugary barley liquid. That process takes between 75 and 84 hours, depending on what we're trying to do. And at the end, we have a beer at 8% alcohol. And that's what the mashing process is. It's the fermentation in preparation for distillation. These run fermenting away. When the fermentation's finished, we then transport the liquid into the still house. And this is our still house. If you come up here, you can see that we've come to the end of a run now, so it's eerily quiet. So distillation is simply the separation of ethanol from water. So we rise the whole liquid up in these copper stills made in the north of Scotland, and we raise it up to 100 degrees. Ethanol boils at 76, and we exploit that difference to extract ethanol. And what we're trying to do here is we're just trying to distill as fast and efficiently as we can, and that then brings us to an intermediate spirit called a low wine, which is at 24% alcohol. So at 10 to 7 this morning, the distillers came in, they fired up the stills, and they finished their first run, and then this afternoon they'll do another run. We take our low wines and we put them in these 2 stills here, and these are called spirit stills. And here, whereas there we're trying to get the maximum extraction, here we're slightly more discerning, and we're trying to take off our spirit at the range of alcohol that we want to put into casks. That decision is made in this machine here. This is called a spirit safe, and this takes us back to the days before 1986, when distillers had an excise man in the distillery, and they had to come up with a process without tasting or touching their spirit. And we use a system of basic mathematics, multiplication of 2 factors tells us what alcohol by volume we have in the liquid. And when the distiller's happy, they simply do that, and we collect the spirit. As you can see, we just finished a run here. We take our spirit off at around about 71% alcohol by volume. When they're finished, they do that. The distillery is a manual process. This depends a lot on the distiller's skill and judgment, but we are able to achieve, but using this system, very high levels of accuracy. Once the spirits come out of that, we then put it into a thing called a spirits receiver. And that's the spirits receiver, and from that spirit, it then goes into cask, and you can see some down here waiting to be sent off to the warehouse. Casks are made of oak. We fill them at 63.5%, and then we leave them for as long as it takes for the spirit to be just right, ready for bottling for you, the consumer. But not all of it necessarily has to go into cask. Within this distillery, we have another still type called a carter head, and if you follow me. And this machine, which is called a carter head still, is a hybrid still with a water jacket at the top, and we call it the Puffing Billy. And this is where we can make gin and vodka using the barley spirit, the new make spirit that we've made in the stills I've just shown you. We can choose to either impart flavor by steaming botanicals, so by putting these botanicals, juniper, coriander, orris, almond, licorice, lemon, bitter orange, sweet orange, by steaming these botanicals, we can impart flavor. And the process is not that different to baking a cake. If you're a baker, you know that the ingredients for a sponge don't change. It's just the ratios that change if you want a light, a medium, or a heavy sponge. We know the ratios that are required to deliver our flavor, so we can replicate the flavor of our gin time and time again with tremendous accuracy. If, on the other hand, we don't want to impart flavor, but we want to extract flavor to make vodka, we use activated charcoal. And we have an unusual process here at the Borders Distillery that we actually steam activated charcoal. Activated charcoal is just where you oxygenate carbon. It produces tremendously high levels of chemical volatility, which is when we pass our spirit over activated charcoal, we are extracting all the flavor compounds, and you're left with a clean, pure spirit, which is called Puffing Billy vodka, after the still. So this is a slightly unusual configuration for a distillery, but it means that we can focus on making new make spirit from Borders barley, and then we can either cask it or we can convert the same spirit into gin and vodka. And that's a big part of our story. We'll go through now and we'll talk a little bit about Scotch whisky in the bar. So this is a fantastic smell. I describe it as warm croissants in the morning, but this is one of the things that makes working in the distillery so attractive, is that you get this fantastic ambiance around you, the smell, the richness, the warmth, and it's all part of the process of making excellent single malt Scotch whisky. Across the bridge again, and we come into the bar. So, welcome to our bar. Here we serve visitors to the distillery samples of what we make. We've just been at the Carter Head, and we make a gin, Kerr's gin, named after a famous Hawick botanist, Puffing Billy vodka, named after the still you've just seen. And then for whiskey enthusiasts, we have an opportunity to sample the spirit as it comes off the spirit still. And we call that Back to the Borders to celebrate that we're the first distillery in the Scottish Borders since 1837, hence Back to the Borders. We also make, in collaboration with other distillers, Scotch whisky, and this is what we sell overseas. We're at about 96% export business. And the one I want to show you today is our blended malt whisky, which is called Lower East Side. And if I just pour it into the glass, first thing we do is we have a look at the colour. We're looking for a golden amber look, nice clarity. Then we take a long, sharp sniff. Everybody's got a different way. In my case, I add water to cut the alcohol down to about 20%. And what that gives me is a fuller expression of the aromas and the flavours that are so important in understanding Scotch whisky. Here I'm getting quite a lot of pear. I'm getting a small amount of vanilla and then just a tiny touch of smoke on the back, which gives it a vibrancy. And after that, I want to confirm what thoughts I have in my head. You want to let the whiskey coat your tongue, coat your palate. Give yourself a minute or two just to let those flavours and aromas work through in the heat of your mouth, and that gives you the full expression of all the complexities and wonderful flavours that exist in any glass of Scotch whisky. Looking forward very much to welcoming you all to Hawick. As part of the Famously Hawick, you can come and see a Tweed mill, come and see Cashmere, come and see the Borders Distillery. Wonderful day out in Hawick, and as soon as this is all over, we look forward very much to seeing you. Thank you. Slàinte mhath.